pretty bad. The psalm was the best thing I had. The Hebrew scriptures was like pretty rough. And the gospel was all about divorce. So I confess I chickened out. And we're doing the Psalms. And we're going to be happy. And the truth is, we want to be happy. Think about it. Some of our songs that basically talk to us about being happy. You know that one. Do, 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 right? Don't worry. Be happy. Remember that one? That's an older one. Some of you newer, younger people might not remember that one. You've heard it, okay. But then there's another one that's like you go, and I'm happy, and then there's clapping, you know, and the guy, that's another happy song, and then there's happy birthday. And there's actually on the internet 65 songs that are supposed to make you feel happy when you're like on the beach with the Beach Boys, and I know you don't know them, but you maybe have heard them, your parents maybe. But you know what I'm saying? There's like lots of songs about being happy. We want to be happy. It's important to our life, to our being. It's actually in our Constitution that we are to have the ability to pursue happiness. Do you remember that? That we are to be empowered for the pursuit of happiness. And there was a great movie called Pursuit of Happiness. That was a long time ago. Some of you may remember. It was about a man who eventually who was homeless, right, with his son, and eventually became a multimillionaire and did things that changed the world for everybody. And by the way, it was a Methodist church in San Francisco that helped him. It was their shelter, the Glide, that helped him be happy, pursue happiness. We want to be happy. Matter of fact, there is, believe it or not, this index that measures the happiness of countries and the misery of countries. It started in 1960 when President Johnson was the president. He kind of wanted to get a bearing as to how the world was and where the United States stacked up into it. I don't know what the original rating was, but I can tell you that the most miserable country to live in at this point, according to inflation, borrowing, and unemployment, is Venezuela. Argentina is the next one, Brazil, Nigeria, South Africa. They're ranked like 60 to 55. We don't live there, do we? Guess what the United States is in regards to happiness or misery? Anybody? Huh? In this survey by the Forbes World, they do it every year. So in 2016, where do you think the United States rated in the happiness misery scale? I have good news for you. We rated higher than Mexico or Russia. Huh? What? 20? We rated at 21. 21 is happiness, and what's really cool is Vietnam rated at 20, so it just shows that it's really good for us to be working together. Number 5 was Switzerland. 4 was South Korea. That's a huge difference. South Korea, Thailand, China, and the number 1 happiest country in the world in 2016 was Japan. Yeah, Japan. And the cool thing about Japan is Japan has done some research on this. There is a Dr. Toshimasa Son and his colleagues from the Tohoku University Graduate School of Medicine in Sendai. They wondered, there's a Japanese word that is, I'm going to mess it up, I just promise you, but I'll do my best. Ikigai. Ikigai. Does that sound Japanese? Ikigai? What it means is joy and a sense of well-being from being alive. Joy and a sense of well-being from being alive. And what they did is they asked 43,931 people between the ages of 40 and 79, some of you aren't in that bracket yet, enjoy, if they had ikigai. And what they found was if people had a strong sense of joy and well-being, they tended to be healthier. But those who had less than a 50% ikigai, in many cases, they were dead within a few years. Sometimes with heart disease, sometimes with strokes. and often by suicide. There's something within us that we have this need to feel good inside, to have a sense of well-being, that what we do in our lives bears fruit. And that's actually one of the things that one of the theologians said, that a happy life is one that we can look at the end of the day and say, I made a difference. It was fruitful. Gretchen Rubin was a person who had clerked for a Supreme Court justice, had a very prestigious law career, and all of a sudden realized one day, I don't know if I'm happy. I have a husband I love, 2 healthy children, I have the perfect dream life. And so she spent a whole year of her life working on a book called The Happiness Project. And each month, she looked at a part of her life and said, I'm going to focus on this. The first month was focusing on her physical health and her energy and starting exercising. And guess what February was? It was focusing on her marriage and really trying to find ways to be happy in there. We all have this need to be happy, and the definition of happy according to the dictionary is that we're delighted and pleased, we're glad, we're in a happy mood, frame of mind, we feel favored or fortunate, lucky. And the first word in our psalm today is happy, or blessed, or I forget some of the other words, but happy are you who follow God. This poem, Psalms 119, this scripture, is 176 verses long. It is the longest psalm in the Bible, and it is I'm going to lose the word, it's a special kind of psalm that has a setup so that, like, the beginning of the first word starts with A, as in the alphabet. And what's different about this psalm is that each section has all 8 verses of that section starting with the word with A, to emphasize that it's A. And then the next 8 verses is B. The next 8 verses is the C. And so it goes through the whole Hebrew alphabet with sections about talking about the relationship of God and the celebration of God's life and word active in your life. The interesting thing is 8 in the number stands for new beginnings. New beginnings. Did you hear that, Chuck? So in talking about being in love with God's words, it's talking about being in a good beginning, a new beginning with your relationship with God. C.S. Lewis said in his book, Reflection of the Psalms, that the poem is not a sudden outpouring of a heart. Though it's long, its pattern has hours for love and subject, and it's for the delight in a leisurely, disciplined craftsmanship. I don't know if you've ever seen those little samplers that people make. You make them, where you embroider or you counted cross stitch and you practice learning your letters back in the day. On that, you learned your alphabet. This is kind of like it was for the Hebrew people. They were learning their language. They were learning the laws of God. They were reciting them and memorizing them and putting them into their life. If we were to look at the Twitter version of it, according to Brad Baston, is those who hear and heed God's messages are the happiest people on earth, regardless of what life throws them. How's that for Twitter? Wouldn't you like to have that Twitter thing in comparison to some of the Twitters that have been out there? Those who hear and heed God's messages are the happiest people on earth, regardless of what life throws them. So here's 5 things that he boils it down to be happy about. The first one is to be hooked on integrity, whose ways are blameless, is what it said. But to be hooked on integrity. I don't know about you, but I don't live my life every day saying, okay, I'm going to be integrity here. But it's one that we want as a common core of us, right? And if you think about it, we always get situations where it's like, are we going to have our integrity or not? Centenary rented a huge cherry picker lift because they're changing out some lights. And so we were like, boy, they'll bring it to us on Friday. We'll work on it Friday. And they probably won't be able to take it back until Monday. And so maybe we can get some extra days for the price of one. And it's like, wait a minute. We can't do that. But everybody does that. We can't use something we're not paying for, right? Thank God we got it done in the first day, so we only had to pay for one day. But we have those situations, tiny situations like that every day of our life. And it's like, do we live out with integrity? Do we make those decisions with integrity? If we live with integrity, we're going to be happy because we're never going to have to worry about somebody questioning what we've done because we've lived a life of integrity. Happy are those who follow God's instructions. You know what they are. Last night at the dinner, I was sitting there and I just heard you all talking. It was such a cool thing to hear people in the congregation telling me what God's instructions are. Oh, love God as you love yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Care for those who are marginalized. And I'm like going, I don't need to tell you that. You know the instructions. Happy are those who follow God's instructions. Love one another. Happy are those who are actively looking for God. A couple weeks ago, I even pulled the have you pull out your phone and put a prayer time thing in. And some of you have been doing it. Some of you are smiling more now that you're being intentional about your prayer time. I see it, and it's nice. When we actively seek for God, when we are actively searching for God, you know what? We find God. And that's a powerful and good time. Happy are we when we find God. Happy are we when we reject evil, when we don't get sucked into the crap of the world. I think that's all I need to say about that. Happy are we when we can resist getting sucked into evil. And isn't it so easy to get angry about what's going on? That we get sucked in. Happy are those who follow God's instructions. Happy are those who look for God. Happy are those who are on God's path. 8:39, we stop, we pray. God, show us your vision for what you want this church to be. Help us be instruments of your design. Break through the limits. God has a path. As we seek God, as we seek relationship with God, we will see that path even more clearly. We'll be in situations and we'll go, oh, that's a God thing that just happened. Oh, look, do you see how things just came together randomly? Happy. I don't know what your ikigai is today.